Okay, team, so we're back here in our geometric logo worksheet, and we're going to keep working away on these logos here. We've covered some of the, I guess, more simple ones, and we're going to start getting into the ones that you have to get a little bit more creative. So the first one I want to focus on is the YouTube logo down here, which seems pretty simple, but it's got one little tricky element that we're going to go over. So the first thing, of course, that I want to do is make sure I'm selected on my YouTube layer so that the artwork that we create is on that layer. And then I'm going to zoom in on the YouTube logo. And once we're zoomed in, we can start creating. So this logo here is created using a rectangle and a triangle, but we got to do some work to the rectangle to get it to be this shape. So the first thing I want to do, I've got just my black stroke turned on so I can trace this pretty well. We're going to create this rectangle here, and I want it to line up kind of in the corners. I'm going to miss a little bit of the edges, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So let's get that just right. That looks pretty good to me. And the YouTube red rectangle there has a couple things about it. The first is that it has rounded corners. So it's not just a regular rectangle. It's got those rounded corners or a radius on the corner. And there's a couple different ways that we can go in and give our rectangle that radius. The first one is over here in the properties panel. And if I click on the transform and show my options, you'll see these guys here. So these are the corner radius. And right now it's locked, which means that all of the corners are going to share the same radius. So whatever I add to any of these four is going to be applied to the other three. And if I click on the up button here, you'll see that it starts to add that roundedness to the corners. And I can go up and down like that as much as I like. You'll see it's being applied to all four corners. If I click that little link in the middle, it unlinks them, and now I could just apply that corner radius to one corner at a time. I can go in and give a different one to another corner. And then, of course, if I press that lock button again, they're all going to move together. Okay, but we want ours to be 0, so I'm going to click that all the way down and leave that turned on. Now, you can use this, but it's not super precise. So that actually looks okay, but let's say that we want it to be really precise. These little circles that show up inside the corners of our rectangles, those are what is going to give us the ability to make that corner rounded. So if I use my black selection tool, I've selected on this shape. When I hover over that little circle just inside the corner handle, you'll see on my cursor it gives that little curved line icon. And that is because it's going to let us click and hold with our mouse and drag in towards the middle, and you can do a really precise corner radius. And you'll see as I drag in, the radius gets larger. It'll eventually max out once the corners connect on the sides. If I drag out, it gets smaller, and I can take it right to where we want. So right about there, and then I let go. That gives us the same corner radius on all four. The way to do that with just one corner or two of the corners, if I click undo here, it'll take us back, is that I would use my white direct selection arrow, and I would just select the one corner that I want to change, and then I can just do that one corner while the other three remain the same. If I wanted to do two, I would select that corner, and then I would shift and click on another corner to add it to my selection. Now I have the control in both corners, and they'll both be resized at the same time. I'm going to undo that because, again, we want all four of our corners, so I will click on the whole shape, and I'll drag that down right to where we want it. So right about there. Okay, now you'll see this YouTube rectangle actually has a bit of a curve on the edges here. So the red is going just outside these edge lines. So I'm going to select my entire rectangle, and then we want to go into the effects. So I'm going to go to effect, and then I'm going to go to warp. And there's a whole bunch of different effects in here that we can use. This one, we're going to click on bulge. You'll see the icon on bulge. I actually clicked the wrong one. We want to go to inflate. Bulge lets me create that arch on the tops and bottoms or the sides. Inflate lets us do it to everything, okay? So under inflate, we're just going to drag that bend down a little bit, and you'll see it previews it. We're going to do it at about, that looks pretty good, 6%, okay? And that gets about the same. So again, you can see when we take it all the way up, it's just taking that shape and it's kind of puffing it out on the sides, giving it a little bit of a warp. But I liked where it was at 6%, so we'll drag it back to there. Now, if you can't get it to drag exactly, you can just select that and type in 6. Okay, preview just turns on and off the changes. So if we do that, gets rid of them. We can turn it back on. Then we're going to hit OK. So now we've got that shape with the little warp that we wanted. I might make it a tiny little bit smaller here. So let's just do this and get it right on the edges where we want it. And that looks perfect right there. And then what we want to do, because we've given that warp to our shape, we want to click on Object and then go to Expand Appearance. And that's just going to apply that warp that we've created. So now the shape is actually where we want it to be. So we've got that red part. We can fill that with red, but we're not going to do that yet because then we wouldn't be able to see the triangle. To create the triangle, of course, we'll go to the polygon. We're going to draw that, not let go of our mouse button. We're going to tap our down arrow till we get down to 3. I'm going to hold down Shift so that it's perfectly straight, but we don't want it pointing up. We want it pointing to the side. So I'm going to use my black arrow selection tool. We're going to rotate that 90 degrees. It says 270 because 90 would be that way. But 270 is what we want. And then we'll drag it over here. And we'll make sure that we get that size just right. And that'll be our YouTube logo. So now we can give it some color. So this, of course, we want it to be white, but I'm just going to use the eyedropper tool. Click on our white background. And then I will select the rectangle and use our eyedropper tool and give it that red background. And then like with all of our logos, we can select everything in the logo and we can either right click and click on group or Control G. And we've got our YouTube logo on our YouTube layer.